I keep forgetting to mute myself. Emerson, are you still in here? Gotta delete this. I'm actually keeping my volume on right now because I forgot to unmute myself earlier. So I decided to keep my volume on. Just give me a couple minutes. Where's my book? There it is. All right. Are you ready? I think Emerson, are you still in here? All right, it started with a dog. Let me retry this. Round 2. Man, I keep forgetting to unmute myself. All right, a few months ago, Buster the Border Collie was rescued from a local animal shelter and given to the Bailey family. He was a gift from Dr. Robert Gordon, whom Charlotte worked with at the hospital and who had become a close family friend. Do you remember who Charlotte is? Who's Charlotte? Yes, she is a twins mom, right? So you guys have to remember that name. Dr. Bob, as the twins called him, when he occasionally came over for dinner, was a kind man whose face settled into a natural smile. He was balding and not very tall, but had big, caring eyes that made him an instant friend to anyone he met. "Oh, Bob, you shouldn't have," Charlotte said, as soon as he surprised them with a canine. "What's up with the pooch?" Connor said, when he came to see what the ruckus was about. "He's all yours," Bob said. "Your mom is always talking about a border collie she had when she was a little girl, and she always secretly wanted another one. I was volunteering at the animal shelter, and as soon as I saw him, I knew I had to adopt him for you guys." "We have a dog?" Connor exclaimed. Although the words came out of his mouth, he hadn't fully grasped the reality of it. "I suppose we do," Charlotte said. Connor immediately fell to the floor and started rolling around with his new pet. We have a dog, he exclaimed. "Finally, our suburban lives are complete. Thank you, Dr. Bob." "You're very welcome," Bob said. "What's your name, boy?" Connor asked. "Buster," Bob told him. At least that's what they called him at the shelter. The black and white dog was obnoxiously happy and had bright green eyes, one of which was larger than the other. Bob had placed a red bandana around Buster's collar. Connor hugged him and almost cried tears of joy. "I knew we've just met, Buster, but I feel like I've loved you my entire life," he said. Anybody ever get a new dog and was overly excited? I remember the first time I got my own dog. My mom hates dogs and she's so fearful of dogs. And I got a Labrador Retriever. Oh my gosh, I was so excited. I remember saying to myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the happiest day of my life. I remember that. Anyways, "Who's this?" Alex asked when she came to see what was causing all the excitement. "This is my dog, Buster," Connor said. He took off one of his socks, and he and Buster played tug-of-war with it. "He's for all of you," Bob corrected him. "Connor, don't use good socks," Charlotte said. Alex unintentionally let out a high-pitched squeal, and her mouth dropped open. "We have a dog?" she asked, and jumped up and down. Something about Buster made the twins act like they were 10 again. "Yes, we have a dog," Charlotte said, and shared her smile. "Don't be disappointed if he likes me more, Alex," Connor said matter-of-factly. "Dogs tend to bond with boys more. It's proven science, I think." "Buster, come here!" Alex called. Buster ran straight to Alex's side and happily whimpered up at her. "Never mind," Connor said, a little disappointed. The twins were so excited to get a dog, they never questioned the gift for a second. They were so distracted playing with the new addition to their family that they didn't see Charlotte give Bob a long, thankful hug, an embrace that lasted too long just to be a friendly gesture. But as time went on, the twins saw more of Bob. They were focused to no- they were forced to notice the signs that their mother and the doctor were more than just friends. Connor sat Alex down at the kitchen table as soon as she walked through the door. Although he saw them every day, Buster couldn't contain his excitement for the twins being home. Twins both being home. He jumped up and down and spun in circles around the kitchen. Buster, calm down, Connor ordered. I swear, that dog needs to be on medication. What's going on, Connor? Alex asked. You love that dog as much as he loves you. How many of you have dogs that do that? My dog, Winter, oh my gosh, she goes crazy. She barks, she jumps up and down when I come home. I'm like, I was just here like 6 hours ago, right? Your dogs get so overly excited. I guess 1 hour, well, 1 year is like 7 years for dogs. So like 1 hour feels like, I don't know, a whole day maybe. That was before I discovered Buster was a bribe, Connor animatedly declared. Take a look at this. Connor retrieved a beautiful bouquet of a dozen long-stemmed red roses from the kitchen counter. He placed them on the table directly in front of Alex. Oh, those are beautiful. Where are they from? Alex asked. They were delivered when I got home from school, Connor said. They're for Mom, from Bob. Alex's eyes widened. Oh dear, she said, and gulped. Well, that's very sweet of him. Sweet? Connor said loudly. This isn't sweet, Alex. It's downright romantic. Connor, you don't know he meant it in that way, Alex said. People send other people flowers all the time. Connor searched through the bouquet. Daisies are friendly. Sunflowers are friendly. A Venus flytrap is friendly. But red roses means romance, he said. And he sent a card. It's in here somewhere. I read it like 100 times before I threw it back in. Here it is. Read it. He passed a small card to his sister, and to her horror, it was heart-shaped. She looked down at it like it had results to an exam she knew she had flunked. I don't want to read it, Alex said. I don't want to invade Mom's privacy. Then I'll read it to you, Connor said, and tried snatching the card from her hands. Fine, I'll read it, Alex said, and reluctantly opened the card. Charlotte. Happy 6 months! XOXO, Bob. XOXO actually means hugs and kisses. Alex quickly closed the card as if trying to stop the truth from escaping it. Connor leaned close to his sister and studied her face, waiting for a reaction to surface. Well, Connor said. Well, Alex said as she ran through a dozen unlikely theories. We don't know that this means they're in a relationship. Connor threw his hands in the air and paced around the kitchen. Alex, don't do that, he said, pointing his fingers at her. Don't do what? She asked. The thing you do when you try to ignore a situation by making light of it, he said. Connor, I think you're overreacting. Face it, Alex. We were blinded by a border collie, Connor exclaimed loud enough for the neighbors to hear him. Mom has a boyfriend. Hearing mom and boyfriend made Alex squirm. In her opinion, the two words didn't belong in the same dictionary, let alone the same sentence. I'm not going to get too worked up about something until I hear it from Mom herself, Alex said. What more proof do you need, Connor said. Mom got a dozen red roses delivered with a heart-shaped card specifying an amount of time. What do you think 6 months means? Do you think Mom and Bob joined a bowling league and didn't tell us? Both of their hands abruptly turned in the same direction. Both of their heads abruptly turned in the same direction when they heard the garage door open. Charlotte was finally home from work. Ask her. Alex mouthed at her brother. You ask her. Connor mouthed back at her. Charlotte stepped inside a few moments later. She was still dressed in her blue scrubs from the hospital and carried a bag of groceries. She walked right by the flowers on the table without noticing it. Hey guys, sorry I'm late, Charlotte said. I stopped by the store on the way home to pick up something for dinner. I'm starving. I was thinking of making a chicken and rice something or other. Sound good? Are you too hungry? Charlotte looked up when the twins stayed silent. What's wrong? She asked. Are you okay? Wait, where did those flowers come from? They're from your boyfriend, Connor said. In the 13 years of being her children, Alex and Connor could count on one hand how many times they had seen their mother become speechless. This was one of those times. Oh, Charlotte looked like a deer in headlights. You have a lot of explaining to do, Connor said and crossed his arms. You should probably have a seat. I'm sorry, did someone promote you to a parent? Charlotte said and glared at her son. Sorry, Connor said and lowered his head. I just think we need to talk about this. Is it true? Alex said with half concerned, half horrified expression. Yes, Charlotte said with difficulty. Bob and I have been seeing each other. Connor slid into a seat next to his sister. Alex's forehead hit the table. I was going to tell you, Charlotte said. I was just waiting. Let me guess. Until we were older? Connor asked. If only I had a nickel for every time we heard that. How many times have you guys heard that? I was going to tell you when you were older, right? Alex, watch out. We may be 2/3 of a set of triplets, but won't know until we're 30. Charlotte closed her eyes tightly and let out a deep breath. Actually, I was waiting until I could figure out how to tell you, she said softly. You guys have been worried about not seeing your grandmother. I just didn't want to add anything to your plate. She took a seat and let the news sink in for a moment. I know this is hard to swallow, Charlotte said. Hard to swallow? We need an emotional Heimlich, Mom, Connor said. I actually think finding out our grandmother is a fairy in another dimension was easier to process than this is, Alex added. Charlotte's eyes fell sadly to her hands. The twins didn't mean to make her feel bad, but they were feeling so many things. They were forgetting to be considerate. Bob and I have known each other for a very long time, Charlotte said. When your dad died, he became a very good friend. He was one of the few people I could talk to about everything that I was going through. Did you know Bob's wife died just a year before your dad did? Both the twins shook their heads. You could have talked to us, Connor said. No, I couldn't, Charlotte said. I needed another adult to confide in. You'll understand one day when you have kids. Bob and I knew what the other was going through. We talked every day at work and became very close. And recently, that friendship has grown. The twins couldn't decide if what she was saying was helping or making things worse. The more she explained, the more real it became. What about Dad? Alex said. Your and Dad's story was literally a fairy tale, Mom. He traveled from a different world to be with you. Don't you still love him? The question was heartbreaking for all of them, especially Charlotte. Your father was the love of my life and always will be, Charlotte said. And these years without him have been the hardest of my entire life. We were married for 12 years, and in that time we talked about a lot of things, a lot of possibilities. I know for a fact that if I spent another year missing your father, he would be so disappointed in me. He would want me to move on, as much as I would want him to move on if the roles were reversed. It was a promise we made to each other. Charlotte went silent for a moment before continuing. The first year after he died, I thought I never would be able to move on, she said. I thought a part of me died with him and I would never be able to move on again. But then Bob told me he and his wife had made the same promises to each other just before she passed away, and he felt the same way. For some reason, just knowing someone else was in the same boat as me, made everything feel so much better. The twins shared a hopeless glance, knowing there was nothing they could do to ease their mother's heartache. I know this is difficult for you two, Charlotte said. I'm not saying you need to be okay with it. You can feel whatever you want, and rightfully so. Just know that Bob makes me really happy, and it's been a long time since I felt this way. Connor unsuccessfully tried keeping a question that popped up in his mind to himself. Connor, what's your question? Charlotte asked, and dabbed the corners of her eyes with the edge of her sleeve. I don't have a question, Connor said, and shook his head unconvincingly. Yes, you do, Charlotte said. Knowing her son better than he knew himself, you always purse your lips like that when you have something to ask. Connor immediately repositioned his mouth. It's okay, honey. You can ask anything, she said. It's really childish and lame, Connor warned. I guess it's something I've always wondered about people who lose their husbands or wives. But one day, if we're all in, well, heaven, I guess, isn't it going to be a little awkward with Bob and Dad there? Alex was about to let out a disapproving sigh, but held it in. Even she had to admit it was a decent question, although she felt horrible for feeling it. A part of her felt like her mom was being unfaithful to her dad. A smile came to Charlotte's face, and she let out a soft laugh. Oh, honey, if there was ever a time or a place where we're all together again, I imagine we'd be too happy to let things be awkward. Alex and Connor looked at each other and knew they were both thinking the same thing. The thought of their family being together again made them both smile. Charlotte placed her hands on the top of theirs on the table. Nothing any of us do will ever bring your dad back, she said. And nothing we do will ever push him further away either. He'll always be with us in our hearts no matter what. I guess putting it that way makes me feel better, Connor said. Me too, Alex said. I'm glad to hear it, Charlotte said, and smiled at them. She got up from the table and grabbed her car keys. I don't feel like cooking anymore. Let's go get pizza instead. It's good to eat something heavy after a heavy conversation. And that's the end of the chapter. Chapter 3. It says lunch in the library. Ooh, shows a picture of a fairy. Who do you think that is? Emerson, you want to take a guess? Who do you think that is? Let's see if he'll say anything. No? You don't want to take a guess? Yes, it's a fairy, you're right. But do you think it's... Ooh, do you think it's one of those fairies from that fairy tale land? Which fairy do you think it is? I'll give him a minute to answer. I'll give him a minute to answer. You remember there was like that blue-green fairy. There was like some... Oh, I don't remember the colors. There's a pink fairy. Do you remember any of the names? Man, it's been a while, hasn't it? The violet one? Okay. We'll see if it's the violet one. We'll find out tomorrow. All right, so join me tomorrow. I'm actually going to read the Land of Stories, The Wishing Spell, on the next video. So if you want to join me there, you can join me there, okay? All right, bye, guys. I hope you enjoyed Chapter 2. Join me tomorrow for Chapter 3.